Hi, Dilip sir. Welcome to the Mike and Shots podcast.
Thank you, Divyansh. Pleasure to be here.
So, I'm really excited to have you here because you are an endurance athlete. And more than that, you are an entrepreneur, a change maker. And that's the most exciting bit about this because, I've been into the running side of the world, right? Cycling, etc. And that really excites me because a combination of fitness and a combination of entrepreneurship is kind of rare, but it's definitely coming up in this world. And with you being a serial entrepreneur all your life, right? And now being an endurance athlete participating in the Boston Marathon, you are really becoming sort of a big change maker when it comes to fitness, definitely, and entrepreneurship as well, right? So on that note, Dilip, I think again I welcome you to the podcast, and I want to know more about you as a person and your journey as an entrepreneur and an endurance athlete. Over to you, sir.
No, first of all, thank you. I think I'm not sure if I do justice to the very kind words you said. Those are very heavy lifting words, change makers, and a serial entrepreneur. I don't identify myself to any of those. I find it weird when people put an identity of serial entrepreneur. I don't know what it means, but I think an entrepreneur is just an entrepreneur. They, is trying to build something, try to solve problems. So my journey of entrepreneurship and fitness has been very accidental. With full honesty, that's not what I'd aspired to be at any point of my growing years, neither in my college or in my early adult years. That was not my aspiration. But I think things fall in place, and I just kind of things kind of worked for me. So yeah, quick background about myself. So I'm born and brought up in Delhi. That's where most of my upbringing has been. Most of my education and everything has been in Delhi. And then I moved to Bangalore. Early part of my career, I worked in a consulting company. And then later on, I think the entrepreneurship bug just took on me and I started figuring out what to do and what to build. So I kind of toiled around startups and startup ideas in multiple spaces, legal tech, fintech. My last company was in the space of fitness. So that's what I've been doing in terms of professionally. So essentially, I like the idea of um, solving for problems for scale at scale where you could intervene technology so that it can impact large number of people. So that's my interest area. So I'm not very confined that I have a specialty area. Like I said, I've worked in the legal space, I worked in fintech, and then I worked in health. These are not an areas where I've been educated per se, but
Yeah.
everything led to my curiosity. And I think fitness, quickly that also came very incidental. There was a eureka moment. I realized I'm not healthy and I want to do something. And I think it just, that was the moment. We can delve more as we build up the conversation, but that's my background. And I live in Bangalore with my wife and my 2-year-old son. Yeah, that's my life.
Lovely. So you talked about the fact that you've had your beginnings in Delhi, right, and then you shifted to Bangalore. Tell me more about the side of the city side of things because I'm also in Delhi, and I day to day see the people and the fitness kind of lifestyle. I've also stayed in Bangalore in 2016, so I know what kind of city that Bangalore is. What's the difference in terms of what do you see the difference in terms of mindset when it comes to say fitness because there is definitely a sort of a difference when it comes to Delhi and Bangalore when it comes to the mindset. I'm just curious about what do you observe?
Yeah, I mean, see, of course, culturally, both are very different city, and that's true with every city in this country. No city is same. So Bombay is not similar to Delhi. Bangalore is not similar to Chennai or Hyderabad. There are few commonalities in terms of zone. So obviously, like we say, North India, South India, East India, West India. So zone-wise, there would be few commonalities, but culturally, very, very different. So since you want me to break down what I see, there are two ways I've seen. So I moved out of Delhi around 2009, 10, right? So it's been good 12, 13 years now. But when I moved out, it was largely for the startup. So back in the days, I think Bangalore was, of course, the go-to place because there was a lot of technology adoption. There was a lot of these IT services companies which had set up their offices and campuses, the multinationals. So there was a lot of talent which was just around in the city, and therefore when these talent moved out of these multinational companies, they were trying to build something of their own because they saw some problem statement, and therefore a startup culture kind of organically built. This was
Hmm.
not the case back then, but of course now things have changed. Like now, when I go back, I mean, part of my family is still in Delhi, so when I travel back to Delhi or Bombay, it's pretty much so common. You have startups ecosystem everywhere in Delhi, Bombay, everywhere, right?
Right, right.
Back in the days, that was a cultural nuance. So obviously, because the talent was mostly centered around Bangalore, so people chose to kind of build things being based out of Bangalore and kind of build from there. From a fitness point of view, I don't see a lot of nuanced differences. I think, like for example, my background is in running, so I see runners everywhere whenever I travel. So maybe that's my running lens. So if I'm in Bombay, I see a lot of runners. If I'm in
Yeah,
Delhi, I see a lot of runners. So
right.
it's the same. I think now overall the understanding and the conscious choice of being healthy has increased a lot in
Hmm.
India, and it's true not just in tier one cities, but going till tier two, tier three, even in villages. Right, my parents stay in a small kind of town village in Kerala, and when I go there, I can see 40-year-old, 50 or 60 years walking in the
Yeah.
morning. They doing yoga in the morning. So I think that mindset has changed. Yeah, I mean, so short answer to what you asked, I don't see a lot of cultural differences now in
Hmm.
terms of the fitness culture. It's pretty much common.
Yep.
I mean, one can argue that look, someone would say that one city is a capital of running, something like that. But but yeah, I mean, I don't know, if there's a validation to it. But yeah, I think from
Right.
a both from a work wise and from a fitness side, I think we are
Hmm.
pretty much there's an equilibrium now.
Okay. That's a nice answer because I used to see a lot of difference back then, but yeah, I think now people have woken up in every city in every part of the country probably. And you talked about the fact that you were not as fit earlier because I saw some of your posts on LinkedIn. I saw that you kind of had the mindset shift, and when you kind of pivoted from being unhealthy to being healthy, right? In entrepreneurial terms. But yeah, when was that shift and how did that happen for you? Like from being that unhealthy person to being suddenly being the endurance athlete guy who's participating in Boston Marathon.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we could draw an analogy to startups again. Like, I mean, you pivot when you see things are not working for you, and you're going downwards. There's no growth, and there's one eureka moment. You feel that look, this is not working. Maybe this would work, and you have to change the total direction of your world.
Hmm.
So for me, it was pretty much the same thing. Like, I mean, I was absolutely unhealthy in the sense that I was overweight, I was stressed out, so I was unhealthy both mentally and physically, right? And I was doing my first startup, right? So can't really blame that it was because of startup, because startups are a train of stress, and you can't deny that, right? So
Hmm.
staying healthy, eating right, sleeping well, these are variables which do not come as a priority when you're doing startups, right? Because you're constantly on that rut of working, emailing, meetings, all of that stuff, right? So that kind of took a toll on me during my first startup. And there was this moment when that health marker went so bad that I started losing hair,
Hmm.
which turned out because of stress. There was a moment. I mean, the eureka moment in particular was that I was getting down the staircase and I twisted my ankle.
Oh, okay.
And that got misdiagnosed by the doctor, and later on it turned out to be a acute ligament tear.
Oh.
And to get my ligament tear, fixed, I was asked by the doctor to get a surgery done. And I realized that it was too young for me to do a surgery done because I was in my early 30s, and to getting through that all surgical approach was not probably organic, I thought. And doctor asked me to go through a physio. At the physiotherapy, when I started my rehab session, the physio said, maybe you should start jogging, and that will
Oh.
help you in rehab. So I freaked out. I said, look, I have a ligament tear. I can't even walk properly, and you are asking me to jog. But he said, no, that's a way of rehab. You have to build strength back, and this is what you could do. So when I look back, when I have those comparisons, the photo what you referenced, in social media. I mean, when I look back, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I was overweight, but living in that moment, you don't realize that you are overweight or you're unhealthy. So that was my introduction to so-called endurance event, right? I mean, running came very naturally to me. I mean, till that moment, I used to go to gyms, but I never stuck to it. There was no
Hmm.
consistency. I also kind of realized I never liked gym for that fact. But running came very naturally to me because you're an entrepreneur. Early in the morning, you get out, you're fresh in your mind. It's very liberating in terms of that experience to go through that 5K, 10K, or 30 to 45 minutes, whatever you do get in the run. You come back and you get that that mystical endorphins and runner's high. So that kind of fell in very naturally to me. So that was the pivotal moment, that eureka moment for me, and I just stuck to it running. So 10K I signed up, and then it kind of moved on to half marathon, full marathon. So now I do full marathon. So yeah, that was a starting point.
Right. And what's, so people generally talk about the fact that they were in the worst shape of their life, right? They were like 120 kilos and stuff like that. So has that ever happened to you, that you were in a very bad shape? Like, just the fact you mentioned that you tore your ligament, like what was the worst shape you were like in your earlier life, that also kind of was affecting you in a way to start up or just focus better, right? Is there anything which happened to you, like in terms of the worst shape of your life ever?
Yeah, look, when you are already going through a worst time, you don't know what is better, because you're surrounded with only things which are bad. Only
Right.
when you live a better life, you realize that, you have a comparison to see what was good or bad. So if you had to ask me, my early 30s, 7 years back, I won't have any realization that was worse, because that is what I was living.
Right.
Right. And I didn't know what is a better version. Now, when I look back, of course, I can probably, say 100 things what that was worse. Right. I could not, so I used to do a lot of conferences. I used to attend conferences. I could not stand on a conference for more than 30, 45 minutes. I would get
Okay.
tired.
Right.
I was stressed extremely. So now I think over the years, I've kind of learned, and I have some toolkit to kind of understand how to, you cannot cut stress, but what you can do is you can manage stress. You can
Yeah.
minimize stress, right? So those are things which I've learned over the period of time. So yeah, like I said, worst thing, it's very hard to say at that point of time, because everything was worse now when I look back. But if you had to ask me, that version of me, I won't have any one particular to say what was worse, because everything was bad.
Hmm. Right. And tell me one thing, when you started out like running and endurance sports, how did it affect you mentally? Physically, definitely you got fitter, like when you started out. Like how did it started affecting you mentally and also your work in a way when you started out with the process?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very long answer, but I'll try to keep it short. Right? I mean, look, the reason I feel I personally got, connected to endurance sports is because somewhere I felt, it has a common parallel to life in itself. Right? I mean, life is an endurance event. I mean, there's a lot of literature out there which says life is a marathon,
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is a marathon, but it is truly when you start experiencing it. Right? For example, the saying is that if you want to have a strong marathon finish, you don't start fast, right? You
Hmm.
slowly start, and you kind of conserve your energy, and you so that you can finish strong. And that's true in life, in company building, and in everything, right? I mean, so you learn those frameworks as you start experiencing firsthand. That's one. You start appreciating what possibly could be a better way of living life, and a better way of having mental frameworks, right? And that can then, fizzle down into a lot of aspects. For example, I got much more disciplined in my life in terms of time management. I learned the hard way that the biggest thing to say is no. And not yes, right? I mean, you often would keep saying yes, which means you're exposing yourself to a lot of stress, right? But if you say
Yeah.
no, that itself will minimize a lot of your
Hmm.
exposure to activities which may not be good for you, right? So time management, being very disciplined, and most importantly, being very reasonable. Right, like suddenly when you wake up today and you cannot say you can run a sub 3 hour marathon in 1 week, right? You have to train. Or maybe for your listeners who may not understand the nuance of sub 3, or even finishing a marathon, you cannot just
Hmm.
suddenly get up one day and say I want to finish a marathon next week.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
possible, right?
Right.
So you have to
Right.
train, you have to build an aerobic system for 6, 8, 10 months, train, and then do it, right? Maybe you can do 100-meter
Hmm.
tomorrow, but
Hmm.
you cannot do 42 kilometers.
Correct.
And that kind of goes back to the same, like I said, that's with life, being very reasonable in life, right? I mean, you cannot just get up and say, look, I want to be $1 billion company, or I want to be a millionaire, right? I mean, it takes time to build it.
Takes
More
time.
importantly, you have to be honest to yourself whether that's a goal what you will be able to achieve or not. Right. So if you train 8 hours a day, maybe you could do a 10K in 6 weeks. or let's say 8 weeks. I'm just putting a number,
Okay.
right? But if you say that no, all I have is 2 hours a week, probably you are able. I mean, you will be in a position to finish a 10K only in 8-10 months, because you need the longevity.
Yeah.
That same goes in building a happy life, or being I don't know, whatever the metric is for being success in professional life. You cannot have those big goals with unreasonable time. You have to set that reasonable timeline, and then be very honest to yourself. Do you have the time to do that? So yeah, so those are in general some frameworks which I could gain by practicing endurance events in life.
And from endurance, I want to understand, why did you choose running specifically? Because there are other domains as well. There's cycling, and apart from endurance, there's weight training and stuff, which you might be doing. But I think running probably is your main game, right? Where you run marathons as well. Why did you choose running? Because I also chose running for a specific reason. What's your reason for choosing running?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't choose it. It looks like, I got stuck with it. Like I said, when I was not that healthy and fit, I had tried few activities. I had tried badminton. I had tried going to a gym, but I just couldn't see myself being consistent. Right. And of course, now when I look back, there were other factors which were determining why I was not being consistent, because those activities were not priority to me. So running, for some reason, I think naturally I could see an identity fit to myself. Right. It's very hard for me to say why like I said, I didn't choose it. It just came my way, but it fit very well to my personality, my identity. Because I feel it's a low friction activity. Like all you need is a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to kind of think a lot, to book a center to go play a badminton.
Correct.
Any of those frictions are not there. I mean, if you're lucky and you got a traffic free road, all you need is to get out there and run. So low friction, you can do any time of the day. If weather conditions are favorable, you can do, and you can do any part of the world. You don't need a lot of gears. You don't need a lot of, ancillary stuff, which often is an friction for a lot of people in other sports. So those things kind of helped me, and I just became consistent. And then, losing weight and all were not a primary motive, but it was just an outcome.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I was getting better. Right. I mean, in running, I think like just any other sport, in running, the metric is how fast can you become.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, in my case, I was just getting faster with every run and every event. So that just gave me a good high, because I don't come with a pedigree or a background of done athletics in my school, college. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. So so that was good and fun, and I kind of stuck to it.
And from what you just said, I could relate to the fact that I was never into the sports and all during my school time. I was used to play a little bit of football, cricket here and there, but then I started running one day and kind of stuck with it, because I could just go on and on, like didn't feel like stopping. And creatively also kind of helped me come up with ideas, right? While running, it's like a meditation in motion. So I always feel that whenever I run, like even 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers, it's like always meditation in motion. Get those creative ideas. So does for you as well, does it affect in terms of creativity? Like does it help you think better creatively, and even probably think further ahead in life? Like while running, that generally happens with me. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say creative, but I think that time when I'm running is essentially a very sacred me time for myself. I mean, I look at it two ways. One, it helps me to flush out a lot of toxicity around me or inside me in terms of what was there in the previous days or few weeks.
Yeah.
So I can flush it out very easily. Second, and then I can inject back a fresh perspective to it. Right. For example, like last few weeks, I was having a hard time not being able to manage my work and my personal life. My son was not keeping well. So all of that kind of disturbed my schedule. So the thing which constantly loomed in my head was that, why is it happening? Why are these problems? So everything has a meaning to it, right? Probably the nanny who looks after my son, she was not coming. So there was a lot of stress in my head. So when I go out for a run, I could just flush them all out. I could say, okay, I mean, maybe everyone is a human, they have a problem. So, they would also need to take a break. But maybe right now my priority is to take care of my son, be at home, and probably then I can get back to running, and then I can get back to work. I cannot do all of it at one shot, right? I can't be the best person at work and probably the fastest runner in the circuit and
Yeah.
also be the best and the loving dad. I can't do all of that.
Yeah. True.
So I think the running is that time for me, which allows me to, like I said, clear out those negativity around me. And
Right.
then I think creativity comes naturally because when the fresh perspectives come, they come in different colors and different shapes.
Hmm.
I think the creativity is very subjective word, what it
Yeah.
means, but it's a very fresh perspective which doesn't come to you naturally, and
Correct.
then you kind of store it in your conscious mind, and then
Hmm.
you can come back and then you can kind of pick on that and kind of elaborate on that.
That's
Right. For
true.
example, sometimes it could be for me that, hey, maybe I may want to I may want to ask this perspective in my podcast, right? But I might not have a lot of clarity, but
Yeah.
a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I can just save that and come back, double click, and kind of elaborate. So yeah, so
That's
that
true.
way, it helps a lot.
You actually picked the right spot because the questions which I had in mind to ask you, I was got them while running, so I just noted them down, and kind of elaborated when I came back. And from that, sir, tell me about your current routine. Like, what's your routine on a day-to-day basis to like prepare for endurance running, and apart from that, your entrepreneurial side of the world, right? What's your routine?
Yeah, so my routine at the moment is, very distributed in the sense that I have three identities. Like I said, I'm a dad to a very young boy, so that's something which I have to take care of. Although my wife is extremely supportive, she takes care of him early in the morning when I go out, but I still have to take care of him, get him ready to get him to the school, play school, because he's just 2 year old.
Right.
And I like to spend time with him early in the morning because the only time I get to spend time with is early in the morning and in the evening. So I want to maximize as much as time I can spend with him. Although I'm not doing as good job as I want to, but that's work in progress. That's one identity. The second identity is, me as a runner, as an endurance athlete. So throughout the year, I break my calendar into season and off season. It depends on what event I am training for. Depends on what distance I'm training for. So usually the year starts with smaller distances of a 10 kilometer to a half marathon and kind of progresses to longer distances for a full marathon. So
Okay.
I don't do a lot of races. So probably I do 2 marathons in a year, maybe few half marathons and maybe few 10K. But I prefer to train throughout the year.
Okay.
Right. So I love the training part more than the racing part because that's where the discipline gets built. That's
Yeah.
where the intrinsic aspect is, right? So typically for a off season training, I'm running anywhere between 70 to 80 kilometers a week. If it's a season training, especially in a marathon training block, I'm running between 100 to 120 kilometers a week.
Wow.
Which means I'm pretty much running 6 to 7 days. Some days I'm running both morning and evening. Else you can't clock that mileage.
Right.
And that's just the running part. But because running is a very high impact sport, you also have to condition yourself. So you have to build a very good foundation of strength. So I have to also augment it with my strength routine. So I
Okay.
try to get at least twice to 2 to 3 strength sessions in a week. Usually it could be evenings of the days I run because mornings then I can't get all the time to pack. Yeah, that's pretty much. And I'm a early a riser in terms like I think it's been gone many years. I don't use alarm, so my body kind of naturally wakes up,
Hmm.
and I prefer to go back to the bed early. So typically between 9:45 to 10 is the
Wow.
max I can stay up. I start getting my first yawn around 9:45, which is my kind of signal that I'm
Yeah.
ready to sleep. So by the second yawn, I should be on bed because your body needs recovery.
Yeah.
That's the most underrated tool of performance enhancer, which people don't know. That sleep is the extremely most important drug, performance enhancer drug, which is legal and people don't know about it. So
Yeah.
as much of sleep you can get is better. So yeah, so I prefer to get at least 7 hours, 6 to 7 hours of sleep. That's what I. So therefore, it's a very regimented. It's a very boring schedule I've got. Monday to Sunday, get up in the morning, get my run done, come back, spend time with my son, go back to office, come back in the evening. Maybe if it's a strength workout, do a gym session, or if it's a run again, I do a run. come back, eat, prepare my meal, eat, spend time again with my son, go and sleep. So yeah, it's pretty boring, but it's kind of defined and templatized for me now.
And was it the case for you when you just started, like in 2010, early 2010s, that you started running, or is it a very new thing that you're doing, like sleeping early and getting up early? You built this in the last few years, or was it there since like when you started running?
No, certainly those approaches have been evolved. I mean, sleep was not, I have to admit, a very primary, approach to me in terms of health overall. But over the last, a few years, I have started giving sleep an utmost priority. Like if someone had to ask me what's your priority toolkit for health, I would say sleep comes really on top. So I try to measure. I mean, I'm into wearables and data and all of that, but in that sense, I try to measure everything which is going into me and coming out of me. So in that sense, I also try to measure my sleep and a lot of other metrics like heart rate variability and resting heart rate and all of the stuff. But yeah, sleep is utmost priority. It was not there early on, even when I started my running journey. But over the years, like I said, improvements in your activities always come by doing those simple things which you were not doing earlier. And this
Right.
is true in life also, this is true in professional also, and everywhere, right? I mean, we always think we have to do something new to get better, but it's always things which you're ignoring which you have to do to
Right.
get you
Right.
better, right? So
Right.
for me, I realized sleeping well, eating right, spending more time with family were the aspects which were very simple, but I was ignoring it. So yeah,
Right.
those are the areas which I had to work. Yeah, I mean, today, of course, that's where I get the most gains.
And you mentioned eating right. Like, what's your routine with food? Like, what do you prefer eating, and what's your breakfast like? And do you also follow these diets which are there, like intermittent fasting and stuff? Do you do that, or have you experimented with those things as well, ever?
Yeah, so I have a very different approach and take to nutrition. Like I said, I mean, I've never done any dieting. I've never done any intermittent fasting. I've also not got stuck to any of those, routines like keto diet or low carb or anything. My approach to food always has been, and over, especially in the past few years, has been that it should help me in terms of replenishing and damaging what my body has gone through in terms of training, and help me recover and get me ready to perform better the next day. So the food
Mm.
what I eat is essentially channelized into that system, that whatever I'm putting in my body, is it helping me repair the damages which my body is going through,
Right.
and B, will it also help me to recover quickly and perform better the next day.
Okay.
So therefore, I look at food largely from that lens, not really from a diet point of view. So I don't do any macro calculations. I don't do intermittent fasting. In fact, I eat a lot, largely because I burn a lot.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
metabolism has evolved in such a way that I can probably eat, a full plate biryani and I can burn that out the next day.
Wow. Crazy.
But that's it. But that's it. Food, like I said, is essentially a tool for me to help me replenish and perform better. So everything what I eat is largely from that direction. I'm a non-vegetarian, so in that
Hmm.
sense, it's a fairly balanced, but
Yeah.
I'm not overly. I mean, I don't have any overly inclination towards non-veg, so I prefer to eat mostly vegetarian stuff, leafy stuff. That's what I
Hmm.
prefer to do. But occasionally, poultry, chicken, non-veg is fine to me. So yeah, so that's how I look at nutrition. And then in instances where I feel I'm not getting natural nutrients very easily, probably I'll do some supplement to it.
Interesting. And because you follow such a disciplined lifestyle, tell me more about your marathons, the number of marathons you participated in. Tell me more about the Boston Marathon, which you were a part of. Like, you were the third fastest Indian over there, and I read and want to know more about it. So,
Yeah, so this is something which a lot of people, might get surprised to know that I haven't done a lot of marathons, in the sense, usually someone of my experience typically might have done 15, 20 marathons. I'm very choosy in doing my marathons. Like I said, I prefer to train throughout the year and maybe only do very few races, but I want to do very good in those races. So that's been my approach. it's like, a startup analogy that you don't want to build a lot of products. You only want to build one product, and you want to build that product really good. So that's just been my approach as well. So therefore, I typically do two races, like I said, two marathon races in a year. So I think in my lifetime, I probably might have ran 7 to 8 marathons.
Okay.
Probably 2x to that in terms of half marathon. I might have done some 15, 20 half marathons, and then probably another 20, 15, 20 10-kilometer races. But marathon
Nice.
is the primary distance I focus, because that's
Hmm.
where I feel I enjoy most, because these are very painful, hard training, right? I like saying that marathon training is nothing but getting bored while you are getting hurt, right? So that's marathon in terms of how much of races I've done. Boston Marathon, of course, was special, and I'm sure you know it very well. And maybe for audience who doesn't know, Boston Marathon is known as the Olympics for amateur runners, right?
Right.
It's one of those very few races in the world which is very prestigious and very hard to get. You have to qualify
Okay.
to get through, and the qualification is basically you have to run a certain time
Hmm.
based on an age group.
Okay.
So they have an age group every 5 years: 30, 35, 35, 40, 40, 45. These are age groups, and every age group has a certain timing.
Hmm.
So you have to get that timing in any of the previous races, qualify, and then you
Okay.
have to apply, and then
Okay.
you get short selected, right? So of course, in the recent years, now they have an approach where there are these tours and travels people, so you can pay them and you can get through them. That's a very recent phenomena, but
Right.
largely the reason why Boston Marathon is so known and well known is
Hmm.
because it's very hard to get in. It's like saying that getting into an IIT or getting an IIM, right? So you have to have
Right.
a certain pedigree and a credential to get in. So in
Right.
that context, Boston Marathon was very special for me, because as I was evolving my running journey, and not just me for me, but a lot of amateur runners, Boston Marathon is in their goal list. It's in their bucket list that one day they wish to run Boston. And
Right.
therefore, to run Boston, you have to qualify for Boston, which means, the timings are not easy. They're very, very hard, because these are very fast timings we are talking about. So it doesn't come very easy to a lot of amateur runners. They have to train a lot to get to that level. So that
Hmm.
context, I qualified in 2019, but then COVID happened. Then again, I qualified in 2020, and then I applied. Then I could go and run in 2022.
Okay.
The experience at Boston Marathon was just spectacular. I mean, it's just one of its kind events in the world, I feel. I mean, you have people from almost 150 countries, and the entire street is packed. The entire
Yeah.
42-kilometer is packed. So it's a very special race in that context. It's also one of the very hard races to
Hmm.
compete for, because it's a very tough course.
Okay.
Right? It's not a very easy course to kind of perform well. So it's a very tough course. So I had a very decent training on my back, and yeah, I mean, I mean, for that year, just a correction, I was the third fastest Indian for that year. Of
Right.
course, so I mean, I haven't done a Boston post 2022.
Hmm.
So for that year, I was the third fastest. I finished around 2 hour
Wow.
59 minutes change.
Wow.
So yeah, that was special. I think everything clicked well for that day. I mean, the weather was good. The training was good. I was lucky to be on the start line healthy. Yeah, but overall, it's a marvelous experience.
And since Boston is uh, probably the pinnacle of, say, a full marathon, what's next in line for you now? Because I know you won't stop, and can be an ultra marathon, can be a triathlon. What's next for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's something which I constantly ask myself, what is next? It's very hard once you're so dialed into a sport. It's always getting better at this sport, and this is true in anything in life,
Hmm.
right? I mean, it's funny. I mean, if you ask an entrepreneur when they come out of a company, what's next? They will say, I want to build a bigger company or a better
Yeah.
company, right?
Yeah.
Or you ask someone who is working in, let's say, Google, and say that what's next, they will say, I want to work with Apple, or maybe then I want to work with SpaceX, right? So you just want to keep getting better, right? So that's same with me. I think for this sport, there are two ways to look at it. You could actually graduate to different events. If you look at endurance event as a big, so like you said, could be ultra marathon, could be triathlons, or you can just keep getting better in the same sport,
Okay.
which is running, road
Yeah.
running, and get faster.
Yeah.
So I feel, I mean, of course, I'm aging, so I mean, there's a threshold in terms of how fast I can go, but I feel I still have, something left in me into getting better and faster. So probably I'll spend few more years to see if I can keep getting better in road racing alone.
Yeah.
I have no races in particular, but like I said, getting faster is the
Hmm.
goal. So my current personal best is 2 hour 55 minutes. That's what my
Right.
marathon finish time is. So I'm hoping to get faster to that and get better in that in whatever race I hopefully do next. And maybe after a few years, once I feel I don't have enough for this category, probably I start doing ultra or triathlons. But for now, I think the goal is to keep getting better in road races.
And where do you gather your learnings for improvement? Like, how do you learn about fitness? What are your sources? Do you have a trainer, or do you have a what do you call, an icon, a fitness icon that you probably follow, or inspired by or motivated by?
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. I mean, I don't have any fitness icons as such.
Okay.
I think my most of my knowledge is driven by my own curiosity. So I am right now self-coached. So I coach myself. Both in terms of running and in terms of strength training. I read a lot. Mostly, I'm reading research papers.
Hmm.
I follow a few people online, who are well-known authority in that
Okay.
topic. So it could be someone who is very detailed, having some scientific background in endurance, or it could be someone in nutrition, or it could be someone in strength training.
Hmm.
And these days, this wealth of knowledge available online. It could be Twitter, it could be podcasts, it could be books, it could be so much of literature is available online. So I think the real superpower for anyone to learn, of course you can go and hire a coach or an expert, that for sure. But for in my case, I mean, I'm very curious, so it just allows me to experiment a lot, read a lot, and then come back and apply it onto myself to see whether it worked or not, because everything is scientific at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
if you have technology as an anchor, so you can apply. So for example, simple, you can use wearables and you
Yeah.
can apply it and to see what is working for you, what is not working for you. You have real data to tell what is working and what is not working, right? So yeah, I mean, to answer in short, no, I don't have any fitness icons per se, but most of my knowledge comes, like I said, from curiosity, by reading and kind of capturing a lot of knowledge, which is, I think the problem I feel is there's too much of knowledge out there. So
Yeah.
it's very hard to it's very hard to filter out, and often at times even you are confused to understand what is
Right.
genuine and what is perhaps not authentic. Yeah, but yeah, I think reading up a lot helps kind of gather that information.
And I'm just curious because you mentioned that you read a lot and you've been running for so long. What's the best shape you've been in? Like, are you in the best shape of your life right now, or have you been like better than this before? What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. I think just before, I mean, when I am at the start line of a race, I feel I am in the best shape of my life.
Okay.
Once I finish, I feel that yes, I could do justice. But when I start a new training block, I feel I'm in the worst shape of my life because
Right.
you suddenly think that, oh, you have to you have to kind of go up now. For example, last marathon I ran, I was 2 hour 55 minutes. So I realized, oh, I was in a very good shape. Now when
Right.
I'm starting a new training block, I would like, oh, I have to get better than 2 hour 55 minutes, but I'm in such a pathetic shape right now too. And that's, I think, the beauty of the sport itself, because uh, I mean, like, I think it was Charlie Munger who said it. I mean, compounding is the eighth wonder of the world, right? So I think compounding is extremely an important, underrated tool in everything in life, be
Yeah.
that happiness, be that professionally life, or even sport, right? So I think
Hmm.
fitness compounds with over a period of time. So as you keep doing it, you keep building consistency in your life, you keep getting better to it. So yeah, I mean, right now I feel I'm in, hopefully not a great shape, because I know I don't have a lot of training in my on myself. But when I start a new training ball, I feel I'm very bad in my fitness. But with time, I think it
Yeah.
evolves, and I think fitness comes back.
And because you've been doing so many things, running, you're a father, you're an entrepreneur. How do you balance when you're at your peak of your training, probably, or working as well at the same time? How do you balance out things?
I mean, it's funny. Like, I mean, I don't balance. I just prioritize. I
Okay.
think one thing which I mean, this is one thing which I've learned the hard way is that I was trying to do a lot of balancing work, which burnt me down. Right? Because it's very hard to balance being, like I said, good at family, the most performing guy at office, and also doing well in passion I mean, you can't do all of that.
Hmm.
It's very hard, right? It's good to write an article to say 5 things you have to do to have a work-life balance, but you just can't balance. All you could do is prioritize things in your life. So I think I have over the years fallen to this approach of giving priority to what I want to do and what I don't want to do. So when I'm training, I think training is my priority. So I would deprioritize everything in life. And it's a trade-off, right? So if there is something which I could do, probably will give me more wealth or probably give me more, I don't know, whatever fame, I would deprioritize it because then training is important for me. And then when I'm not training, and something happens in my family, let's say, and some health issues, then that becomes a priority for me. Then
Hmm.
I don't think about training or healthy, right? So and largely, like I said, it's very hard to be at your optimum best in everything. So I have made peace with the fact that, look, I may not want to be $1 billion founder, or I
Yeah.
don't want to build a unicorn, but there are few things which I want to do. So in my case, I have a rather bigger list of things which I don't want to do than a list of what I want to do, which
Right.
also is in a sense that there are many things, which uh, I don't know, and there are, very few things I know. So I'm happy, like I said, in that sense that, there are few things because I don't want to do. But what I want to do, I don't know. But there are few
Hmm.
things which I don't want to do, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a confusing answer, but yeah, I mean, I don't do balancing. Like I said, I try to prioritize what is important and what is more valuable for
Hmm.
me and people around me at that time, and focus on that, get that right, and then move on. And then everything what you do is a teamwork, right? So whatever you're doing at office, home, or elsewhere, you need to have a solid team around you, and your team is your family. So you have to carry your family as a team. So even if I'm training, I every time I start my training blog, I sit down with my wife and I say that, look, this is a training blog which I want to get in. She may not get the technical aspect of it, although she understands it very well, but the idea is to sign her as well into the process.
Hmm.
Because if I have to train, which means I have to get up early in the morning, I have to get more rest, which means I need to be more sleeping. I have to be spending more time on the bed, which could mean that I might not be able to do a lot of other things, which ideally, as a parent, as a partner, I may have to do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I have to work that as a team so that my partner also understands that, and then there's no friction which comes in middle of the journey. And
Right.
that is the same case, like you said, if you're starting up, you don't start up by just not telling your parents or your partner or your wife that you want to start. You don't do that, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
tell your parents, you tell your partner that you're going to start up. You tell them what are the uncertainties which will come your way. You
Yeah.
would also tell them there will be instances I may not be in for family functions, or we may not be able to go to vacation. So the idea is that you're
Hmm.
signing up not just as an individual, but you're building a team around yourself and you carry them along the journey. So that's very
Interesting.
important, I feel. And these are things which I didn't knew. I think I learned it the hard way over the years, and kind of that seems to be helping me now.
Interesting. And you said learnings, and you are currently doing a podcast, which is the other side, right? Why did you start the other side, firstly? And what are your learnings from the guests that have come, and like completely of you?
I mean, the name itself is a very self-explanatory. The idea of starting the podcast, and I named it The Other Side, essentially was because I want to genuinely learn the other side of these people. So most of the time, the world we live, we essentially, it's a very one-sided, knowledge dump or a
Right.
data dump what you get, right? For example,
Yeah.
I would only know about you being someone very active on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
a creator, a podcaster, but there is something unique about you which
Right.
I may
Right.
not
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
Maybe you might like painting and you might do a lot of painting. Like you said,
Correct.
you do running, right? So everyone has this unique identity which anchors their primary identity.
Right, right, right.
Right. So, like you said in the beginning, because you also like running, you also do cycling, and that has
Yeah,
helped you shaping what you do otherwise.
right.
But the world only knows about you on the primary side of it. So my
Hmm.
idea was, when I started the podcast, it was essentially in the beginning. These were few people I had knew for a long time, and I knew that most of these people were known in the professional world for their professional identity. So this could be founders,
Yeah,
CEOs, and people know them because they run a unicorn company or whatever. But that was not interesting to me. I mean, because that's known to everyone. My curiosity was to know the other side of there, what makes them do what this is.
right,
And
right.
because my interest is around health and fitness, I saw there was a common pattern amongst with everyone. They
Hmm.
all gave their mental health a priority. They all gave their physical health a priority. So there was a certain commonality, and there were some dots which were getting connected amongst all these people. So that was a starting point to kind of have this conversation with these people to understand what were their mental framework,
Right.
what is a physical routine. Because look, if the world knows an X person be a billionaire or a unicorn founder, they look up to that identity,
Hmm.
right? But if the same person can also come and say that, look, I sleep on time, I eat right, I meditate or whatever. I mean, I take a walk with my child, or I take a vacation. Now, those things are not celebrated. But when
Correct.
they say, look, I do this as a priority, and this is why, which has helped me who I am,
Yeah.
maybe people can also get inspired and motivated to do that also. Because the world we
Hmm.
live here, we are very overwhelmed with vanity metrics.
Right.
The
Yes.
car someone is driving, or the watch someone is wearing, or the funding someone has raised. These
Yeah.
are all very vanity driven, right?
Hmm.
So I wanted rather that let people also talk about their other side, which made them who they are. And it just started like a more of a curious side passion project, which is still a passion project for me. And I'm really lucky, and I'm very grateful for everyone who has agreed to be on the podcast and shared their insights. So I've learned a lot from them, and I hope people who have tuned and listened to, they probably also learned a bit.
Yeah. I love your setup because it's like such a beautiful setting that you have for the podcast. So that's lovely. And the conversations are mind blowing. So thank you for having
Thank
that,
you.
starting that podcast. So motivation for
No,
me.
thank you. That feedback means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
And you said that you are learning from other entrepreneurs as well, other people as well, about their other side of the things, right? Now, I would want you to talk about some advice for entrepreneurs on fitness or building the other side of the world. Like, what's your advice for them, aspiring entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs?
Look, I think and one thing which it's very hard. I mean, because there's so much of advice and gyan which is out there. I think it's a very cliche thing which people say, right? I mean, health is wealth. But I think health is not wealth. Health is health, and wealth is wealth. So try to value each independently. You cannot buy health by creating wealth, right? But maybe you could become wealthy if you're healthy. I don't know. I mean, I'm not wealthy in some markers, so I can't say that. But I know for sure, because I'm healthy, I have the ability to think, and I have ability to go through a lot of different phases of life to kind of understand what is good or bad, right? So I think one thing which I've learned it in the recent times is that it's better to be consistently good than occasionally be very great,
Hmm.
right? And anything you do in life, right? So if you can keep doing it consistently, you'll really be good at it. But just suddenly, if you come and you just be a kind of star, you're just a one night wonder. And we see it everywhere. Like, I mean, why is Rahul Dravid so respected in the cricket fraternity? Because he's been consistently good. He was never
Hmm.
a one of those guys who would come and hit a shot, and but we
Right.
have had Sehwag, and we have all those. You get the point, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you will always remember one guy because of his consistency, because of the legacy someone has built,
Hmm.
right? And then, like I said, I mean, compounding is the most underrated, but yet the most valuable tool in the world. It applies in everything. You can't be the most happy person next week.
Yeah.
You have to do small things and, let it build in yourself so that it gets compounded. Likewise, you can't be the most richest person next week. I mean, you can do by doing something illegal or wrong, but that's
Hmm.
not the organic way, right? And likewise, you cannot be the most fittest version of yourself next week,
Right.
right? So you have to keep doing it consistently, and it will pay off,
Hmm.
right? So, so yeah, those are things. And yeah, at the end of the day, it boils down to the fact that how happy you are. When you get up the next day, do you feel like going and doing the same activity? Are you as excited, as energized, or do you feel it's a drag? Like, for
Yeah.
example, the podcast for me is, I told myself the day I wake up and I feel, no, it's a drag, I will stop it.
Right.
Because for me, the intent was not to be an influencer or not to be of any, in no metric. It's just like, I like talking to these people. I find a wealth of knowledge I can get. So I will continue to do. The day I feel, oh, it's very overwhelming, I'll stop. Same
Right.
goes with running, right? If I
Hmm.
get up in the morning, I mean, there are, of course, days where I'm tired, but I still have that low, probably I should go out and do. But if it becomes very overwhelming, I'll stop doing it. So yeah, at the end of the day, whatever you do, you should have fun, build some consistency, give it some time to compound to get some returns, and yeah, you will be good at it.
Perfect. So I think that kind of concluded the whole episode today. And that was a beautiful answer that you gave and kind of inspired me as well in a way because I've been doing so many things. So consistency is definitely key. Yeah. So it kind of pays off in the long run. So on that note, sir, I'll end this episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining in. It was lovely to have this conversation with you. I know your other side of the world as well. So that was lovely.
Thank you, Divyansh. You've been very kind to invite me to your podcast. I wish you all the best in everything you do. And good luck to all the listeners and people who are watching. And just stay healthy, be happy. And I'm happy to be of any help to anyone. If I can be, just feel free to reach out.
100%, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Take care.